Rafter P Construction is the design-build contractor for all of your construction needs. Quality and customer satisfaction will always remain our top priority. The American dream has inspired the Rafter P team to push to be community leaders and support the local youth because that is our future. Let's now talk with the founder and owner, Brad Pryor.
Hey guys, today we're here to talk about deer breeding facilities. We touched on this before on the earlier video we've done, but we're talking about pens. So those pens, we always say, do not build the pens before you build your deer facility, or think about your deer facility before you build a pen, right?
Have your facility in mind when you're building your pens, yeah.
And don't build them in a hole. That's the number one thing, right? So luckily we're sitting in a facility that was somewhat thought out before there was some pens here, but not all of them. But anyways, we got it all put together and I felt it turned out well, but a lot of things that we're thinking about is how many deer you're gonna work,
right?
Number one, right? Or how many deer you're gonna have in the future. So what does that look like when you're thinking about holding rooms? This one has what, six?
6 holding rooms. Yeah, I mean, when you're working a lot of deer, you want to have a lot of holding rooms so you're not stuffing them really tight in there and getting their body heat up. And when you're able to spread them out, you're able to keep them more comfortable. And when you're putting them to sleep, they can lay down and you're not worrying about them laying on top of each other and cutting their airflow off. And so you really need to think about that when you're thinking about your facility and the number of deer. You kind of have to take that into consideration. So
people that are not familiar with the deer, whitetail breeding world, what is breeding time? What's that space look like? Obviously, you guys know, all right, hunting season starts November 1st for rifle, depending on, Texas, what have you. But typically in a deer breeding world, so what's that space look like? So temperature-wise outside,
it's cool,
what's going on, stuff like that. But when you bring 150 deer into a barn or 80 deer,
their body heat's going to bring this temperature up regardless of the size of the barn. So
you would think the common person would say, well, it's November. What do you worry about temperature?
Right.
But you put all of them in. What's the temperature of a deer normal?
It's 100.
100?
Yeah.
So you put how many
More
of those?
You can put, honestly, a facility like this, you can put 100 deer in here.
So that's a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And this dude's got a lot of air conditioner in it. But and it would keep that temperature down, but you got to think of that space too. So that way they're acclimated to one space. They're not stressed out, not laying down on top of each other, all that. It keeps them, and also when you're working that amount of deer in a facility like this, you're worried about the deer and you also have a lot of humans.
You got to keep them comfortable too, so they can help.
When you explain a little bit about when you take a deer down. I hate to say take a deer down, but they're in the holding room,
right? And
explain that process so we can describe the rest of it.
So when you're artificially inseminating a deer, you bring them in 3 times, and you're bringing them through the chute. You're putting a cedar in to prevent them from going into heat, and then you're sending them back out. You wait, and then you bring them in, pull the cedar, give them a estrogen shot, and after that, on AI day, you're bringing them in here, putting them in the chute, giving them a tranquilizer, then you run them into the rooms and you put them to sleep, then you load them on carts and stretchers and bring them to the vet to do what he does. So.
Right. Well, in this facility, we built the dock and AI room.
He's got his own
space. Yeah. But when I was here, when y'all were working deer at that time, back in November, there were stretchers, they're all lined up, being ready to prep, shaved, and all that stuff. Well, when you have all of those humans and stretchers and all that stuff going on, you need working space for actual where everything's going on, not just in the holding room.
Right.
So that's a big thing to me to think of, which this one to me, we've created more space and off of other facilities and stuff. Right. It was very comfortable for what I saw.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I would say on that AI day is keeping that vet comfortable too. And, when you're dealing with the semen and everything like that, you got to temperature regulate that. So having his own space for that is really good.
In a facility,
right?
Not in a set of pens.
Right, in the actual working facility. And, if you're too tight, you might be rolling one of those deer around and bump that vet, and you're dealing with semen that's costs quite a bit of money, and you might waste it if you bump that vet and he does something wrong or, God forbid, hurts the deer. So.
Right, and then honestly, we've built a couple of these facilities for deer stuff, but this was my first time this actual facility actually see it going on. I mean, it's pretty intense when he's messing and dealing with that. in that room. Like, I would hate to know if he's out in a pen doing it, or in a hallway where people are running around him and somebody bumps him, whatever. It's
very precise.
Very precise. And I had no idea to that degree. But, I think, having a lot of room for the deer, having room for the people working, having room for the dock, all that good stuff goes a long ways. We put a lot of light in that room too for him, so he can see where he's going, even though he's got his scope on. But I feel like it makes a big difference in when you're creating a facility. And we're going to talk a lot more about facilities. This is just touching the base of what there is to talk about. But to me, the first thing is when we're interviewing a client or we're talking to a client, we're going to talk about the space. How many deer? What does your end goal look like? Because last thing we want to do is create a space for you that's not going to work for you forever. And I feel like that's what doing our own plans and working through a customer with a budget, design, build, all that stuff. It helps them land the end goal, and make sure that deer's being we're being safe for the deer, we're being safe for the people working them. It goes a long ways. So I hope this helps. We'll be following up with other interviews and other conversations about deer facilities. I'll talk to you soon.